Are you thinking about moving to the Chicago suburbs? This video is for you. I'm Pearson. I'm a local realtor. I serve downtown Chicago as well as the western suburbs, and I make weekly videos like this one on community information, real estate, and driving tours. I've lived in both downtown Chicago as well as the suburbs of Chicago, so I can tell you definitely what are some differences of living in the suburbs versus Chicago that are maybe not as obvious or well known as the most common ones. Is you definitely get more space living in the suburbs versus Chicago. There's just less space in Chicago. It's much more densely populated. All right, so the first one about living in the suburbs, that's definite pro living in the suburbs, would be it's so much quieter living in the suburbs versus Chicago. I lived in Chicago for many years. I lived in a condo. It was right by the Belmont Blue Line stop. During rush hour, I would hear, the doors are closing now, next stop. I would hear the train line making the announcements during rush hour. It was quite loud. You could hear the PA system of the CTA train line. I was by the platform. Also, the buses were quite loud. You hear the beep, beep, beep of the handicap accessibility, ramps being lowered if you're by a bus stop as well throughout the city. So the trains and buses are loud, traffic's loud. It's just a lot more louder in the city versus suburbs, so a lot quieter in the suburbs. Next one would be there are express trains in the suburbs. Love express trains. So I haven't quite seen my favorite express train be added yet since COVID. There was a 34-minute train from Naperville to Chicago. An express train only stopped at a few stops, probably about 5 stops. They're the greatest. I lived in Chicago for many years. It would take me 55 minutes to get to downtown Chicago taking train or taking the L, and I only lived a few miles north from the loop. So express trains are amazing in the suburbs, so it's a plus. Next one would be, if you're a golfer, it is so much easier to golf in the suburbs than living in Chicago. Okay, yes, there are a few golf courses in downtown Chicago. There's some public courses. There's a 9-hole one along the lakefront. There's a few public golf courses, I will say that. But my husband, who's a big golfer, loves to golf, he would drive an hour out to the suburbs to get to the golf courses in the suburbs. He claimed that the golf courses were just better quality, better maintained. So if you're an avid golfer, there's so many more golf courses and you don't have to drive as far to get to the golf courses. Third one would be, at least this is in Naperville, my town where I live in, garbage day. Okay, so if there's a holiday and your garbage day lands on a holiday, where we live, it just moves to the next day. If you're in Chicago, you'd have to wait an entire week for your garbage to pick out, and your garbage kind of gets piled up. So I like that one. Last one, another benefit, especially maybe if you have a family, less traffic. So we lived in Wicker Park when our daughter was young. She was about 2 years old, and she would run a lot. So I always had to worry about her running into traffic. Living in the suburbs, it's not as much of a worry of young children running into traffic as it was in Chicago. It was a very high concern of ours. We lived in a very densely populated area, and you really had to worry about young children running into traffic. So it's a lot easier in the suburbs, less traffic and congestion. So that's a few of the maybe not so obvious benefits of living to the suburbs. There are more, of course, as well. But if anyone you know is looking to move to the suburbs, I'd love to help them out. My info's below. I'd love to help you find your next dream house. I've got another great video coming up, so stick around.